Ukraine followed up its long-range weapons attack on Russia on Wednesday, this time reportedly with weapons from the United Kingdom. This follows attacks on Tuesday with U.S.-made ATACMS or ATACMS missile. Joining me to discuss is one of the loudest anti-war voices in the UK, Jim Ferguson. He's a former parliamentary candidate and a journalist and the founder of Freedom Train International. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Natalie. Always great to be on with Redacted. Thank you.
Well, but not happy circumstances. I mean, I can understand why the outgoing Biden administration would ordain an escalation with Russia because bloodthirsty globalists have their time ticking out, right? But why would the UK go along with this? Don't they, want to live?
Yeah, well, I mean, you raise a very, very important point. You know, there are top generals in the United States warning about the risks of Biden remaining in power. For any length of time. Although he's outgoing, thank goodness, Donald Trump, as president-elect, is preparing to take power in the White House again. Nevertheless, we face a very dangerous situation. And, you know, in May 2023, the UK supplied Storm Shadow cruise missiles. These are long-range cruise missiles that can penetrate up to 250 kilometers. And it was given on the understanding that they wouldn't be used only within Ukrainian territory for defensive purposes. However, in November 2024, Joe Biden gave the all clear for those ATACMS missiles that you're talking about, the US supplied cruise missiles, to be used in Russian territory. And of course, they made an incursion into the Kursk region and they used those missiles there. Now, it is reported that Storm Shadow missiles have just been used on Russian soil. And of course, the fact that the UK is supplying these, Natalie, raises very significant diplomatic tensions, not only with Russia itself and their allies, but also with other NATO allies as well. So we are watching a potential major escalation, which, as the previous President Medvedev, who's the head of their Security Council, has said, has led to Russia formulating a new doctrine on the use of nuclear weapons. They're not kidding around. They're really serious about what's going on here. So we are facing a very, very tense situation. And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, is playing an incredibly dangerous game.
Right. And I think most people don't understand that we are allowing Ukraine to attack inside Russia where the war is not. So where most people maybe think the war is, it's not in Russia's border. It never has been. It's in the contested region of Ukraine. Ukraine is not even trying to fight to get that territory back because they have no hopes of it. If we refer to the map, the Donetsk region, the Donbass region, that is the contested territory. Ukraine has no hope of taking that back. So they're sort of playing dirty and poking from behind. And Russia has said that we will consider this an attack on the places that are supporting Ukraine, meaning NATO countries. So at least in the United States, we have an incoming leader who says we're not going to let NATO control our foreign policy. We want peace. Just because NATO wants war doesn't mean we need to. In fact, the NATO head who was appointed today by Donald Trump, in the announcement, it even said, we'll put America first. Like, we'll join NATO. We'll go to your parties. We're not going to do what you say. But the United Kingdom has no such leaders. Am I correct?
You're absolutely 100% correct. And the situation, as you've outlined, is 100% accurate. You know, the whole situation with the Luhansk, Donbass regions, which are on the eastern side of Ukraine, where most of those people are Russian-speaking people, and people forget that actually Ukraine and Russia have a very long history together, going back over many, many years. But what happened in the east of Ukraine, when they started to use heavy artillery, cutting off their water supplies, banning the language that is their native tongue, which is Russian, by those white-collar workers in the west of, in particular in Kiev, but on the western side of Ukraine as well. We can't forget what they did. They sent the battalions like Tornado, which are Nazi battalions, down to massacre civilians. And of course, that then led to the Odessa massacre, where people were locked in tenement flats, barricaded in, they were set on fire. People jumping out of third, fourth, fifth floor windows were beaten to death, shot in the head with pistols. That footage is still around. And I remember watching it way back in 2014 as it unfolded. And I don't believe for one second that Russia had any real intentions of doing anything like some kind of land grab. but they couldn't sit back and watch their brothers and sisters who speak the same language and who share the same philosophy and cultural identity as most Russians. They couldn't just sit back and let that happen, because those were civilians trying to fight against Western-supplied military artillery units. And of course, it led to an agreement which Angela Merkel and various other leaders basically said was all a sham. They had no intentions of the Minsk agreement holding true. And that really upset the whole power play, because it's like being in business. When you make an agreement, when you agree to doing something or not doing something, you're bound by that, but even more so on the international stage. So they betrayed the very agreements that they had signed up to that would have led to a peaceful outcome. And all they really had to do was say that they would not be allowed to join NATO. That probably would have sufficed as far as President Putin is concerned, but they didn't. They double-crossed the Russians, and now they're paying a terrible price. And of course, those people in Ukraine who fought and who died bravely on the battlefields, they're not the problem. The problem is the corrupt leadership within Ukraine itself. And we all know that there is massive, massive corruption taking place there.
Well, you can see evidence of Ukraine attacking the Crimea area down through Odessa after the Maidan coup. There's a documentary, and it is put out by the Russian government. But even if a modicum of it is true, it's shocking, because this is not at all what the Obama administration told us at the time. I want to refer my viewers to this. And again, it's Russian state media, but it is the opposite side of what we're being told. It's called Crimea: The Way Home, and you can find it on YouTube currently. So I want to ask you, I guess, the last time we spoke, we spoke about a possibility of a draft of British people in order to fight this war in Ukraine. And the news, the local BBC news, was interviewing people saying, well, I guess if we have to, we'll just do it, right? Do you think that's the temperament that young people in the UK want to fight for Ukraine?
Absolutely not. They don't want to fight for Starmer either. You know, Starmer only got in with about 20% of the populist vote. The reason that he got in was because Sunak, who is another globalist, I believe deliberately ruined the Conservatives' chances of being re-elected. And quite frankly, people just stayed at home. They didn't come out and vote, which of course led to Starmer being elected with a large majority. But Sunak was at this as well. He was talking, and he's been interviewed on live TV shows where he talked about the fact that they would take the driving licenses away from young men and women who refuse to go and fight, that they would shut their bank accounts down. I mean, you're never going to get people to buy in and support a war with threats like that. I don't believe the vast majority of people in the UK want a war with Russia or anybody else. And why would they? This is a globalist agenda that's unfolding here. They want to cause great instability to usher in their new financial systems of digital ID and central bank digital currencies, all about control, Natalie. That's what the end result really is all about. And they're very good. They're masters of deception and division. And that's what they're doing. But I don't believe for one second that the vast majority of young people in Britain want to go to war and die on Ukrainian battlefields. I just don't believe it for one second.
I find that hard to believe, too, although I was in London about 4 months ago and did see some signs in some apartment complexes saying we stand with Ukraine. They looked a little sun-faded, so they'd been there for a while, but that was very much in vogue 2 years ago, to put it on your social media profile, to say that, to put, some decorations on your car. But I want to ask you about this, because today Gallup released a poll showing that the majority of Ukrainians don't want the war. And in fact, the support to keep fighting has plummeted. Most of them want a peaceful resolution. Who wouldn't want that? So if the West stands with Ukraine, shouldn't we honor their wishes of peace? Because standing with Ukraine to go to war is only standing with Zelensky, not the people of Ukraine, right?
Right. Well, I mean, if the globalist puppets and proxies that the globalists have in our Western nations, including the United States and the UK, were true to form and believed in democracy, they would take something like that Gallup poll and treat it with the kind of courtesy that it deserves. Because if you look at that similar poll approximately 2 years ago, there was a higher percentage of people in Ukraine that wanted to fight and wanted to do that, but not now. It has plummeted. And I think they've come to the realization that they're never going to win a war against Russia. And of course, the vast majority of people know somebody in Ukraine, a neighbor, a friend, a family member who's died or been seriously injured. We're not just talking deaths, we're talking about serious injuries that have been occurring to the Ukrainian people, and it's dreadful to see. I hope, Natalie, that with the re-election of Donald Trump, who President Putin has a high degree of respect for, because he knows he's a strong man as well. And most strong men will respect. They might not always agree or go along with what their opposite numbers are saying in those respective countries. But nevertheless, I believe Donald Trump will bring a peaceful solution to this. And his own family members have come out quite categorically and stated, as soon as Donald Trump is elected, the war in Ukraine is going to end. And I can't wait for that to happen, because we need peace and stability.
Absolutely. And yesterday on the show, I posited that perhaps Putin is showing a restraint because he knows that the incoming administration in the United States is not as bloodthirsty as the current one. And maybe we saved ourselves by voting for the administration that is not currently bombing them. So hopefully that's the case. But do you have any leaders to look to in the UK who would support something like this that are currently in office?
Not really. I would say that Nigel Farage, who is a former colleague of mine, somebody who is a good personal friend of Donald Trump, would probably have very similar views to me on this. Unfortunately, he's only a member of parliament, but I would say watch this space. I think Reform is currently polling way ahead of both Labour and the Conservative Party in Wales, where there is an election taking place soon. And it could be that we will see some changes taking place there. But yeah, Keir Starmer is a globalist. He is a vowed globalist. He's a Davos man. He likes Klaus Schwab. He's a member of the World Economic Forum. He's an ardent globalist and also a socialist bordering on a communist. So it's a strange situation that the UK currently finds itself in particular with journalists being locked up for simply speaking the truth and reporting the news, whilst the prisons are being emptied of child molesters and violent criminals to make room for people who have written tweets or posted things to criticize the Keir regime. So I hope that Trump gets into the White House quickly and that there is a transition of power that is peaceful. But, I love the United States. I love the American people. I was there in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago. I interviewed Senator Ron Johnson and various other people. And they deserve a leader like President Trump, not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. So well done, the American people. You've not just saved America, you've probably saved the world, if I'm being honest. And I very much look forward to Trump being put into the White House again and hopefully restoring peace and order throughout the world.
Thank you so much for that perspective. So you can follow Jim on X. It's at Jim Ferguson UK. Thank you for coming back on Redacted. It's been a while. Come back soon.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Natalie. My best regards to Clayton as well. Thank you so much.